Deborah says she was brainwashed by her therapist to believe that her parents raped and tortured her when she was a child. She became so terrified of her parents that for 4 years she kept her own children away from them. Then Deborah realized she'd been programmed to falsely accuse her parents while she was in therapy. And today we've reunited Bill and Dolores with their granddaughters. Vanessa, who joins us now, thinks Deborah is still in denial about being abused and that she's now putting her children at risk. Now, Vanessa, why do you think that?
Well, mostly because I think it would be giving her therapist an incredible amount of power to say that a therapist could make her think all of those things. And from my own personal experience, I know that this kind of abuse does happen. And I had memories, some long-term memories I never repressed and some that I had. And I know that for me it was real, and it is real.
How long have you been
in therapy? My siblings believe it. It has happened to my siblings also.
I want to make it real clear during this broadcast today that we're not denigrating legitimate, bona fide cases of horrific childhood sexual abuse and molestation. That's not what this show is about. It's about how memory is not like a photograph. It's not an exact picture. And very often when somebody is vulnerable, and I'm talking about Deborah's situation, she's on these drugs, she's feeling very vulnerable, she wants to please this therapist, and you're saying you did give the therapist a lot of power.
He had a tremendous amount of power. He made all my decisions. He told me what to do. I did it. He
told her to divorce her husband. He told her to sell her house. And
well, a tremendous amount of power.
You have a different experience.
Yeah, I have a completely different experience.
What happened to you?
Well, I was sodomized by my father starting when I was 3 years old. And some of that I never, ever repressed. I started having flashbacks and flooding of memories spontaneously, and I would even pass out driving. I almost had 2 head-on collisions because I passed out driving because the flashbacks were so intense.
But did you always have some memory that you had been sexually molested?
I always had some little, some portions of memory that I had been sexually molested, but not to the extent that I did once I had flashbacks and flooding.
And that's when you went into therapy?
And I went into therapy because I had those spontaneously. I wasn't in therapy when I had them. I've never been led by a therapist. I've never been hypnotized or taken through visualizations ever.
Okay, but she has been.
Right.
I think that's real important because there are 2 types of victims. I mean, there are the real victims that, they were definitely abused, and they went into therapy and said, look, I've been abused, help me.
But I also know that sometimes for me, even knowing that, and whenever I first confronted my father in 1986, my closest sister became angry with me because she was in denial because she didn't want to have to deal with it, and she had repressed her memory. I did not share details with her at all. And in 1988, she started having spontaneous flooding and flashbacks, went into therapy, and then began to share with me her memories, and they were almost exactly the same as mine. And so, but I understand the struggle to not want to think any of it could be possible. Sometimes I wish to God I didn't have to deal with it. And if I were going to make up a life, this is not the life I would make up.
Right. No,
I'd make up being a princess, of some
rich... It's a terrible thing to have to have.
Let your mind go deeper and deeper and deeper.
In cadence, slow and reassuring, a therapist leads his patient into her past.
Deeper and deeper and deeper.
During 2 days of therapy, Vanessa, the name she's asked us to use, will drift through dozens of emotions and personalities.
Oh, God.
Rosa, what is your job?
I'm this doctor's.
Susie, how old are you?
3.
Your name?
Rudolph.
Vanessa originally sought psychiatric help for depression and eating disorders, but as her therapy continued, she began to remember episodes of sexual abuse at the hands of her father. Those memories then turned into vivid recollections of satanic rituals.
It was premeditated and systematic, methodical, fragmenting of our personalities, and then using other children and sacrifices to terrorize us.
Children were murdered?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
One time there was a baby there, and they stabbed the baby and killed it, and we all had to drink blood.
Though Vanessa's father denies every accusation And there are no police records to substantiate her claims. Her memories seem brutally real. In words and pictures, she has recalled a childhood poisoned with physical, sexual, and psychological abuse.
How did you know it was true? How did you know the memory was true?
I became the little girl who observed that. That's who I became during that memory, and I was terrified. And I'm not making that up.
I went into therapy because I had those spontaneously. I wasn't in therapy when I had them. I've never been led by a therapist. I've never been hypnotized or taken through visualizations ever.